Good evening. A police manhunt is underway after a series of knife attacks in Birmingham city centre last night, in which one person was stabbed to death and 7 others were wounded.
Everyone talks about knife crime and assumes that to do with that gang shit. The media is quick to televise, but that ain't gonna help stop it. Chefing this and shanking that and glorifying that Rambo. There's a consequence to every action, but I bet you don't think about that though. Parents crying, families torn for having to bury their child. Kids these days are moving mad and they're running around all wild. Open up some more youth clubs, more support and less academics. Let's work together to help stop it. This knife crime's now pandemic. Kicked out of school, roaming the streets to try and fit in with others. Dads ain't always on the scene, but don't mean they have bad mothers. So what we're gonna do to help stop it? More support, more funding, less blame. Put down the knife, spare a life. It's not just a victim who pays the price, but who's to blame for all the pain? We're all gonna suffer in this murder game. Every life they take is another mistake. Why do some people have so much hate? So put down the knife and save a life. It's not just a victim who pays the price. Why is it that they're carried? Is it protection of your own life? But did you know that you're more likely to be stabbed with your own knife? The government makes false promises and cutting up pots of funding. When everyone thinks about knife crime, they think it only happens in London. Knives are used in a lot of crimes, not just gangs that are on the roads. Police work hard to solve the crimes, it's hard when they have high caseload. Domestic violence, burglary, terror acts, to name a few. The sentence for stabbing can be lengthy, not just tag and a curfew. Think of the consequences before you pick up a knife. You don't want to get a life sentence for taking someone's life. More support, more funding, less blame. Put down the knife, spare a life. It's not just a victim who pays the price, but who's to blame for all the pain? We're all gonna suffer in this murder game. Every life they take is another mistake. Why do people have so much hate? So put down the knife, save a life. It's not just a victim who pays the price. Put down the knife, spare a life. It's not just a victim who pays the price, but who's to blame for all the pain? We're all gonna suffer in this murder game. Every life they take is another mistake. Why do people have so much hate? So put down the knife, save a life. It's not just a victim who pays the price. Let's play.
Hello, I'm a door supervisor. I've just been told that a young lady's been stabbed. Yeah, she's on the floor. Hello, can everyone calm down a second, please?
Welcome to another Liquid Bullet Productions. With us today is former gang member, youth mentor and knife crime ambassador, Mr. Cole Scott.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, mate.
Cheers, you're welcome. Thanks for having me on.
So you was involved in gang life, you served a prison sentence, and you yourself was a victim of a knife crime.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just can we go back to the beginning, get a bit of your brief history and your background and your upbringing, please, Scott?
Yeah, well, I was brought up in Nottingham, born and bred. Mum and dad broke up at an early age. We moved around different places constantly, like from one house to another. There was a lot of domestic violence going on at home.
Yeah.
My dad left, which left me and my mum basically on our own.
Yeah.
But I found out myself a couple of weeks ago from speaking with my auntie that there was a lot of conflicting stuff going on from when I was a kid. So there was like stories of me being left at home on my own as a baby with no one in the house and stuff. And so I had the family members come and help me and save me from being alone, really.
Yeah.
My mum was young when she had me, so.
Yeah.
So as time went on, I got probably about age of 9. I had quite a traumatic event happen to me when I was a child. So I was like sexually abused by a family member. Yeah. So from then, it had happened for a few years. So as you can imagine, for a young kid at that point, not even be able to speak about it.
Yeah.
There was a lot playing on my mind with it. So I was quite an isolated kid. Never really said boo to a goose, and I kept a lot of stuff locked up.
Yeah.
And then once it came out that happened, that's when I started to have my outbursts and my behaviour started to change like, dramatically.
I suppose just when you're that age, you don't really understand, what's right and wrong, do you, as well? Like, if that's what you sort of come up against, you sort of, led
It was just confusing. I didn't know why that happened, whose fault it were.
Yeah.
Ask questioning yourself as to why. What was the reason why that happened? Am I this? Am I that? So there was a lot of stuff going through my mind. But obviously, I didn't want no one knowing about it.
Yeah, of course.
I'm a male as well, so looking at it from a male's point of view, it's just like it's not something that you want to discuss. So
did you find that sort of sort of blamed yourself for it at the beginning, like when really it wasn't your fault at all, is it?
No, well, to be fair, on a few of the occasions I put myself in the situation because you know my parents was when my mum got with my stepdad, like there was a lot of music stuff going on, so you know our family was a musical family, so they was travelling around on different clubs, and we was left with babysitters quite on a regular basis. Yeah. So where I had my brother and sister, they was quite younger than me. I did have an option to go somewhere else and not stay at his house. But if I did that, my brother and sister would end up having to go to his house, and then, you know, God forbid what could have happened. So I was, you know, putting myself in that situation on purpose, just out of protection for my brother and sister.
Them,
so, it was hard. It was hard.
Yeah, it's a lot to deal with for a kid as well. It's
Yeah, it was. You know, as I look like later on in life, you know, I can see half the reason why my behaviour was the way that it were. You know, probably like a cry out for help. But obviously in the 90s and stuff, you know, you just look through the net and there's nothing that can pinpoint that stuff that goes on. Yeah. Which then led me on to rebelling quite a lot. Then from there, I got involved. I say gangs. So, like, you know, you ask any gang member, you know, unless it's like a postcode, you've got a name of your gang, and if it's just a bunch of friends, we're just a bunch of friends. Yeah. We just like tight and loyal with each other, and we've got each other's back. Anything goes wrong, we're there, and you know, if my pal's this or that, we're there, and that's just kind of how it were, and we all like had a lot of love for each other, which was what I was finding I didn't have in my house. Yeah. So I found that.
Looking for sort of a bit more comfort and
and I had that, you know, we was just really antisocial, and because me growing up I didn't have much money. Mum and dad didn't have, well, stepdad didn't have much money, so it was a struggle to even get, you know, 10p for a chomp bar, you know. So because of that fact, if I can't get any money from that, I'll have to go and get it from somewhere else.
Can I just ask, how did that sort of affect your schooling as well, with all that going on?
School went downhill for me. So once this abuse thing came out, when I was 13, I had this kid that was bullying me for some time, and I just basically held it back. I was quite timid, you know. I weren't really a fighter, and when it all came out, that's when I exploded. Really, I went to school one day and I smashed this kid up, which I think was a shock for most people, but like even teachers was a big shock for them and my family as well. So from that point I got suspended from school on that. So that's when my school issues started to go wrong. We moved to Sheffield for some, because I was getting in so much trouble. So we moved to Sheffield. My mum and dad got a pub up in Sheffield in Netherthorpe, and my behaviour just continued. Like even in Sheffield, I got to a school in Sheffield. My accent's a little bit different to a Yorkshire accent. So you know, I had people picking up on my accent, and I was just like, I was always angry. And then I basically treated from school for about 6 months, and then I got caught for the whole 6 months on this one day, and they kicked me out of school. So from, I think it was about the age of what, I don't know, 14, I didn't go to school. Yeah. So that's where the problem started. If I'm not at school, what else am I doing? Yeah. I'm out on the street.
Yeah, I suppose as well at that age, now you're fighting back, you're starting to get a little bit more respect, and people sort of, you know, stepping back for you, not going to sort of push the luck with you when you start fighting back.
Well, to be fair, what I did, I put myself in boxing.
Right.
So I was boxing at Croft House boxing gym, Sheffield. If anyone knows where that is, I was boxing there for a while, and I was doing really well with it. And then when we moved back to Nottingham, I started boxing at a club called Bull Youth Club, and it's where we had boxing in there. And I had a couple of tournaments, and I did really well. And it was something that I was good at, but I was putting my anger into that. So instead of me scrapping on the streets, I was kind of doing it in there, really. Yeah. But it was mixed in with a youth club at the same time. So there was a lot of like older kids that was in there, and the stuff that I couldn't have, like, you know, it's simple as like your cans of Cokes or your packets of Walker's crisps and stuff, you know. Yeah. We couldn't afford that, and like, all these kids was having that, and that's what I wanted. So I kind of found myself gelling towards these older kids. I was always following the older kids. I got on better with older kids than I did the younger kids. And that's where I then started to move away from the stuff that I should have been doing, moved away from that and just picked the streets instead. Yeah. And then, so there was a lot of stuff that I was getting up to on the street. I'd even get to the point where I was terrorising my own family.
Really?
Even my own family, yeah. I had a lot of hatred towards my own family.
Yeah. In what sort of circumstances do you mean, like terrorising, like sort of just shouting or sort of?
It's just typical kid stuff. Like,
Yeah.
you know, there'd be like a load of us, and I always felt that I was treated differently to what my brother and sister were. Now, this is no thing on my brother and sister at all, like, and not even anything on my stepdad, you know. Like, I'm a stepdad myself, and sometimes these things do happen. You do seem to be coming across like you're treating one better than the other, etc. I'm in the position myself. You try and treat everyone exactly the same, but there's always one child that will get, you know, a different treatment, you know. It's just hard, it's hard to explain when you're in that situation. So when I look back, I can see why. But at the other side of it, I was an arsehole. So when the punishments that I used to get was like just crazy, like, you know, I'd get battered, literally, like a grown man.
Physically?
Yeah, I'd get battered, and that was the kind of thing that toughened me up a little bit. So me and my pals, we'd literally terrorise my house. We knew the stuff that would wind my stepdad up, and we'd just go and do it to wind my dad up. And I'd be literally egging my own house, booting the doors and stuff.
So you're still at the sort of like teenage years here?
Yeah.
And you're getting beat up by a full-grown man?
Yeah.
So yeah, even there, it's just the age difference and the physical like strength of a man to a child is.
But wait, if you look at that now, to this day and age, unacceptable. Yeah, completely unacceptable. This day and age, you know, you lay a hand on your kid this day and age, they're getting taken off you by social services, and you know, it's chaos. But back in the 90s, you know, it was a bit of a different scenario. You would get a slap back in the day. And it was just something that we was used to, you know, like you're late from coming home, like you expect a slap for being late from coming home, you know, so that's why half the time I'd run away from home, because then I knew I wouldn't get a slap. Because if you go missing, there's, you know, the anger about you not coming home is it's gone a little bit, and you're not going to get the slap, you're just going to get grounded and not allowed out. So I
then
take
you
that.
start more caring because of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, you know, then again, I can't really blame everything. You know, my behaviour was bad and like agreeable for the slapping of kids back then in the 90s. I probably did deserve a slap here and there, but you know, not full-blown punches. You know, but a bit of but it toughened me up. I think that's what brought me into what I was doing. So, you know, like I was going out scrapping all the time. Us as a gang, we'd go out looking for it. You know, if we see someone that we didn't know, like we'd beat them up, like 100%. Like it happened.
I suppose as well, they say, don't they, like if you're getting bullied like by a grown man, sometimes that trait sort of goes on, doesn't it? Passes on. So I suppose when you say you're going out looking for fights, it's probably the knocking on effect, isn't it, from that?
I thrived off it. I mean, I'm not a big man. And it's like I say to everybody, it's not about being how big you are. It's the mindset.
Yeah.
And like my mindset back then, I just didn't care. And bearing in mind, I didn't have all I had was mum, dad, brother, and sister. So when I'm out on the streets, like I've got nothing to lose really.
Yeah.
You know. So and with everything that had happened to me previously already, anyway, I hated the world. So I'm going to go out there and ruin it, which is what I did. So anything that I can get myself into that's going to cause chaos, that's what I used to do. But I'd be egged on more than anything, like, you know.
By the gang.
I'd be egged on.
About with.
100% egged on all the time, and I was that naive, and a follower, and a yes man. You know, I'd just go and do it, which resulted in a lot of bad stuff. So
you're sort of led by sort of someone putting bullets in the gun and giving you it, and you're to be the one that's firing them. That
I would have.
type of thing.
100% I would have. There's a lot of stuff that I can't say. There would have been a scenario like that could have happened, luckily, if I wouldn't have been in jail. So my mum always used to say, like, she's passed away now, but like she used to say, it's a good job that you was in prison at this time, because you would have been involved. And I would have been involved because I was stupid, you know. But yeah, so, you know, going on from that, I'd left home at this time. My mum had broken up with my stepdad, and he was supposed to stay in the house with me and my brother and sister and look after us until they managed to, if they was going to sort it out, you know, rekindle or whatever. But he didn't. He moved off to his parents with my brother and sister, which left me in the house on my own. So as a 15-year-old boy, I took advantage of that and just had all my pals around my house and just caused absolute chaos. One of the guys that I was talking to him a few months ago, I won't mention his name, he's quite high profile. Because there was a scenario that happened in the house, and he was lethal, this kid. He was like the first youngest kid to have an antisocial behaviour order in our area when they first came out. always in the news and stuff. He was, he'll know who he is when I'm talking about it. I won't mention your name. He set fire to my curtains in my house. So the curtains like literally flew out.
On purpose or just by accident?
On purpose, yeah. We was just rebel. We was just doing crazy stuff. But he got to the point my next door neighbour was complaining about it because I was in the house on my own.
Yeah.
And I was having loads of people around. Like my house was packed. I must have had about 20, 25 people at a time in my small living room throughout my house with 2 dogs in there as well. So we was causing chaos in my house, all out on my the greening outside our house and stuff. There was parties most nights. Like it was crazy. A few fights outside as well. You know, people getting baseball battered and that. Yeah. So it was crazy. So my uncle worked for the council at the time, and he came with a couple of police officers and like got me out of the house, which led me on to move into my uncle Martin's house. He's ex-military, like absolute nutcase. Like, but he was, you couldn't ask for a better uncle, you know. Yeah. He was one of them uncles that you'd like to go around his house, you know. Although you could probably smoke weed or have a beer or something, and then you're underage, like. He was a really caring uncle. He was really good, and I really looked up to him. Yeah. So I moved in with him. It was at that point then that I had so one of my friends, like he was chilling with this guy, and we didn't like him. He was new. He was a new face. And sometimes, you know, when you're in the gang, you do have sometimes new people pop up. Yeah. And you either accept them or you don't. And I'm quite a good judge of character. And I didn't like him. Like straight away, I didn't like him. I thought he was a mug. And I said like to my pal later, and I was like, listen, this guy's a dickhead. You've got to stay away from him. He's going to end up getting you in trouble. He's like, no, it's cool. I was like, no, he's a dickhead. You need to get rid of him. He's going to get you in trouble. So anyway, we carried on. We was just going with the flow with it and that. His face kept popping up, but we started hearing stories about stuff that this kid was up to. And Leighton was with him quite a lot. So there was this one day we was all stood by a wall, and I did some filming on this on my own YouTube, and I went to the spot. I hadn't been there for about 20 odd years. And this car pulled up, and a couple of lads jumped out, and we've scattered, and he was just froze on the wall, like fight, flight or freeze, and he's literally just frozen, you know. We've all like ran off, and we're shouting at him like just to run, you know, and he just didn't. He just stayed where he were, and he just ran up to him and stabbed him in the chest. So, and it was just like what? Just couldn't believe what I just saw. He was like my best friend, you know. So we've run over to him, and his legs were still literally over the wall. So he's like back on the floor, and he can't breathe. His eyes are rolling, blood coming out of his mouth. So it was obviously a bad stab wound, you know, because he was bleeding heavily. I had him on my legs, and I was telling him to stay awake, etc. And then he died. So there was no chance of like the ambulance saving it. He died there and then. So from that point, that fucked my head up.
Yeah, I can imagine
that was hard, you know. But it didn't stop me, because this is how it goes, you know. If you're on the streets and you're doing this stuff, it comes with it, you know. Like you know what you're getting involved in whilst you're doing it. It's what happens. You know, but you don't expect it to happen to you, or anybody you know. You always hear about it happening to other people, and you just don't understand. You know, it can happen to you as well, and it did that day. So that happened. You know, that was quite harsh, and it did affect me. Still affects me now to this day. Every time I talk about it.
Well, so what age was you when it happened?
15.
She's still
over
young.
15.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah. But it was the stuff that we used to see, you know. There's a lot more to certain things, you know. And it's, but he didn't deserve that because it had nothing to do with him. It was that dickhead that we said to stay away from, you know. And he lost his life because of this kid, because he was seen around with him, and this kid had robbed someone's house. And I think it was only something like 300 quid and a couple of ounces of weed or something. So it wasn't like, but this day he gets killed over a tenner, you know. So it was just So like about 3 to 6 months or something like that. Like dates, like because it's such a long time ago. But about 3 to 6 months after that, we was underneath this subway underpass. We call them subways where we come from. Like you walk under, but it like a road's above it or something. You just walk underneath. And we were stood on the corner of that, and there was a couple of lads like walking up the chase and that. And my pals was like eyeing them up, like who's that? And I'm like, who's that? Who is it? So we've looked, and they weren't from where we were. Like they shouldn't be walking there, you know. Like they were stupid to be doing that. But it was bracing, you know. That's just what I'm saying. People that just didn't care. So I ended up weighing one of these kids in. And did a good number on him. His power ran off. It's another thing I say to kids, and when I work with kids, I was like, be careful who you hang around with, you know, because in a circumstance like that, this kid got weighed in and his power ran off and left him, you know.
Yeah.
If your pals and you're tight, you're there thick and thin, whether you're going to get hurt or not, you're going to stick with your pals, and he didn't. He ran off. So you're a pussy. But what happened? That happened. So. I used to smoke weed back in the day, and so back in the 90s and that, there was no, we didn't have mobile phones. So only the people up there, like, you know, the big man money, like they had the mobiles. We were still on the BTs, you know, like 10p in the telephone box. So I went over to their side, and I had to use the phone to find up the skis to get some weed. And I find them up, and he didn't even have any. That was a waste of time. So as I've come out of the phone box, I got shouted, and I've kind of looked out the corner of my eye, and I saw these 6 lads, and I, like back then I was like working through them of who's who, and the kid that I beat up was in the middle of them. So I was like, all right, so it's either going to go down or I'm going to chip, you know. And I never used to run from anyone really. It was just like just stay and deal with it, just get to take a good hiding. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Still try and have a good tear up back. With 6 people, I ain't got really a good chance, you know. So that happened, yeah. They jumped me, and then I felt like this sharp pain in my leg. Like it was like it's hard to explain, like an electric bolt going through your body.
Yeah.
It was just like it was like up my shoulder down to my foot, and then a stingy sensation. And at the same time, I could feel this. I'm still getting banged up. Like I'm getting waved right in. I'm getting kicked in the face and everything. So the pain of that is more around my face.
Yeah.
Like I was, you know. So it took me away from that. And as they stopped, I looked to my leg, and I had a carving knife sticking out my leg.
It's still hanging out.
Yeah, it's still there. It was still there. So I'd seen it. The minute that I spotted it, all that didn't hurt anymore. That did.
Focused on
you know,
that,
you know?
yeah.
And I'd just been battered. So like, and that did not hurt anymore. It was like the knife hanging out. That's what was hurting me. So I remember putting my hand onto it, and I fainted. So the ambulance or the consultants, like, if I would have pulled that out, I'd have died anyway. It was so close.
Just from the loss of blood.
Yeah. It was so close to the main artery. I'd have died. As soon as I'd have pulled it out, it'd have severed, and I'd have died anyway. That was hard. That was hard. But then again, it was classed as I've been stabbed. You know, like just a bit of a show-off thing. I've been stabbed.
So it wasn't a learning curve for you there. It was more of a trophy, so to speak.
Massive trophy. Yeah, because obviously my best friend, he was killed, but out of all of us, I was the only one next really that had been stabbed. You know, so it was no one really could know what it would feel like or go through it, because none of them had been through that. Everyone's been battered up or something, or threatened with knives, but not actually literally been through that. So it was just like, you know, I've been stabbed, whatever. And then about 3-4 months after that, another lad that I was chilling with, we ended up kind of falling out a little bit. He wasn't moving like he should have been moving. We've all got a bit of a code, and you have to move and follow that code. And if you don't, like we don't like the way you carry yourself. Like we start to, you know, step back a little bit.
Yeah.
Because things like that back in them days, it's quite dangerous, because if you do anything, you're going to end up getting caught because of clowns like that. So it's just about moving, like, you know, move away from him a little bit and kind of do things a little bit separately. And he wanted me to nick this car. I was like, nah, I ain't nicking no car. I didn't like the area that we was in. It didn't feel right. I had a nervy feeling, and it just didn't feel right.
Get a gut feeling sometimes, saying ain't right.
Yeah. He stabbed me with a screwdriver in the stomach, you know, Phillips one. Still got the star mark there next to my belly button, because I wouldn't do this car. And I'm thinking, wow, like, literally, like, I'm just.
And this is meant to be one of your associates, like you.
Apparently so, yeah. So, you know, so I've gone through it again. But I didn't go to the hospital with this one. I just left it. It was kind of like, it didn't go in too far, but it went. I felt it, you know. And that's from then. That's when my life started taking a turn for the worse, really, because I moved into a hostel, and at the time I was serving up. I was selling heroin. I didn't even know what heroin were back then. I knew the name, but I didn't know what it were, what it does for a drug, how it makes you feel, you know, none of that.
Yeah.
Didn't have a clue. And when I moved into this hostel, there was a lot of heroin addicts in there, goofing out on the sofas and that. And I said to this kid, Dino, I was like, well, you know, why are they all sleeping and that? Like, and he was like, oh, they're on that drug heroin. I was like, really? He's like, yeah. So I was like, is that what it does to you? Like, yeah, that's what it does to you. Have you never tried it? I said, nah, I've never tried that. And he was like, well, that's how I tried it. So I tried it. And I think, you know, when it comes to drugs or addiction, you take something, you either like it or you don't. And I liked it. So what I found was, that all that stuff that I'd gone through, so the abuse, the childhood stuff, you know, the stabbings, the losing of my friend, didn't think about it anymore.
Like an escape to
Yeah.
forget the bad stuff.
So that, forgot it, continued to do it. But what happened was, I was using my own supply. So I got myself in debt, which resulted in my so-called friends, and I got kidnapped. I was bundled into a car, and I was pistol whipped, smashed in the face, punched in the mouth. I had my mouth open with the shooter put inside it, threatening to shoot me, like kill me, basically. Literally pissed my pants. Like that was the most frightening situation I've ever been in. I've been in some sticky situations, and that was one of the worst for me, because I did think that I was going to die, because I knew what they was capable of. So I've seen it with my own eyes with certain things that's happened.
And that was from like, owing the money for the debt for the drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was only a couple of £100 as well, and this is my point. You know, you can die over a tenner. You know, so and these was friends of mine. So I was quite scared at that point, because, like, as I say, I knew what they was capable of. I've seen stuff, and I know that, like, you know, life means nothing to these people. So I got kidnapped and taken to this country road, beat the shit out of me, and left me stark bullet naked on this country road. And I survived. They let me out the car, and I'm thinking, wow, like, you know, there was loads of things going through my mind at the time. And I didn't think I was going to make it through. But I did make it through, and luckily I survived that. And this nice lady come and helped me, and as embarrassing that is, because I've got like my balls out on that, because I'm like naked, but I've literally been bashed up.
I suppose at that time, though, that was the least of your worry, wasn't it?
Well, I didn't care about that. I was alive, you know.
Exactly,
so
yeah.
So from that, when that happened, that was it. I went downhill. So I kind of removed myself away from all that, and continued being in the hostel. And from then was where like prison come from then. So like, you know, it does come with the drugs anyway. You'd think from gang stuff that the jail would have started. It was actually like, it weren't even so much about the gang stuff that got me in prison initially. It was the drugs.
Yeah.
So
what, from the dealing or from the?
From doing what I had to do to make money to get it.
Yeah.
You know, because I'd lost all that from that point, because I'd removed myself away from him, and I'd gone in a bit of a rut. And isolated into a corner where, you know, what addicts do, you know. And what I was doing was, I started getting into the point of like getting cars, just not having them insured or no tax or anything like that. And back in the day, they used to be like producers. So you'd get pulled over by the coppers. Have you got a license? No. You got insurance? No. Oh, you've got no tax? No. Producer, 7 days.
7 days, yeah, it's easy with them days, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's what used to happen all the time. And like, because I had 2 names as well, which was a bit of a benefit for me. Because my mum was like Kemp and my dad was Scott, so my birth certificate was Scott, but I was brought up by my mum's maiden name most of my life, even in school and that. So I worked around this, and I knew that I could use both names legally. So every time I got nicked, I'd either go with Cole Scott or I'd go with Cole Kemp, whichever the one I needed at that point. If I was wanted in Cole Scott, I'd go with Cole Kemp.
Yeah.
So by the time I'd go to the police station, even though they don't know, I've got 2 disqualified drivings on my record, but I've gone as Cole Kemp, so they're letting me out. So when I go back the next time, I've now got 4. So that's what was happening. So I you know, that kind of ended quite quickly. They clued onto it, and I got like a little minor sentence at first. I got a 4-month sentence for disqualified driving times 6, I think it were, with the non-insurance and all that.
Disqualified 6 times.
6 times, yeah. Disqualified times 6, yeah. I've got my DBS on that as well. It's there. It's on top. But so they gave me 4 months in Glen Parva YY in Leicester.
So, Carl, what age are you now when we're talking? So you're
18.
18, so still really young.
Yeah, turned 18. I'd been nicked a couple of times, you know, with that. I did like a robbery and a fray, which was stupid. I don't even know why I did that. That was just one of the worst decisions I made doing, you know. I think we only got like a baseball cap and 50p out of it, do you know what I mean? It weren't even worth it. I'm not saying it's worth it anyway, you know, because that's not what I'm about, but I'm, you know, yeah, the police come through my door on that one, like, and they took me to the police. I think I was in the police station for nearly a whole day and a half or something on that. So that was quite bad. Yeah. So I've been nicked a few times on that, but just little slaps on the wrists and cautions and stuff. Yeah. So going into Glen Parva at 18, like I weren't expecting to go to jail, because I wasn't like a prolific offender, but I was known. but I wasn't known as a prolific, you know, like there wasn't many times I'd literally been in the police station or been nicked for anything, you know. So for them to send me down, I was like, what? Like,
Yeah. Was it a shock for you at that time, like sort of a bit of a, I'm going to prison, a wake up call?
Yeah, big shock.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say wake up call, it was just a big shock.
Yeah.
So when I'm on the sweatbox and I'm on the way, world just passes you by. So you're sitting in this sweatbox in this small, like basically the size of this chair with a little door there and a blacked out window. No one can see in unless you put your mush up right close to the window, but no one can see in there. So you're seeing people stood at a bus stop, you're seeing cars driving by, they're just going about their business. You're now on your way to somewhere where you're going to be locked up for a few months with screws opening the door when they feel like it for you and letting you out for your food and all that. Like, I didn't know what to expect. I was quite nervous, to be fair. When I got into the jail and I was booked in and that, I could hear all the noise and the racket that was going on, and I was just like, wow, like, what kind of a life is this? Like, what am I doing here? Walked onto the wing, and it was like, so when you go into jail, so back in the day, so what they used to do was, they'd ask you if you're gang affiliated for one. 9 times out of 10 you'd say no. No, I'm not. They say, are you sure? Because there is obviously people in, we need to separate and, you know, make sure that you're in the right place, in the right wing. No, I'm not gang affiliated, but obviously I were. But landing on the wing, when we go into like a holding room, and in that holding room, that's when the screws will come in and they'll fill out some paperwork. And they'll ask you if you smoke and all this stuff, and they'll give you like a welcome pack. So it'll be like half ounce of Baccy, a little Chew-It bar or something, some Rizla. It used to be matches back in the day, because like now they do lighters, well they vapes now, but it used to be matches, which as mad as it is, like in prison you're hunting round for matches. Like, have you got a match? Have you got a match? Like, I'll give you a match if you give me 4 matches back. It's just like, what? Like,
trading.
It was a whole new world for me, you know. Yeah. So when that happened, I got on the wing. It was like Unit 15, Wing 15. I was in induction wing, and from being on there was quite a lot of friends on there that I knew from the road. Still wasn't a place to be. It was jank in there. Like literally, it was horrible. The cells was horrible. The mattress was about that thin. Like it was just not. It wasn't anywhere that you should be. But it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. It was quite easy. Yeah.
How did you find it, Loss, when you was going in there? 'Cause obviously, you don't know who you're going to be in there with, as sort of murderers and gangster, you know, all types of villains. So how was that for your mindset when you first went in there?
Didn't think about it.
Wasn't bothered?
No, it didn't cross my mind at all. In fact, to be fair, half the time when you're in there, you don't really know what people are in for.
Gotcha.
And it's like, even though people will say nowadays, like, oh, what you in for? Like, what you in for? What you in for? Like back then, not many people used to ask what you was in for. It just never was discussed. So now people are actually talking, like nowadays, you're talking about what you're in for because you've got nothing to hide. People can't say that you're a nonce or something. So like, it's just like, oh yeah, I'm in for robbing this person, or I'm in for stabbing that person, and like, you know, because you basically have to prove yourself now with like what you're in for. But back then it wasn't really the case. But because it was a YOI, it was that was an allocation jail, Glen Parva. So you'd start off your sentence there, but they'd ship you out to somewhere else, depending on if you can get a good job in there, which they'll keep you in that jail. But if you didn't, they'd ship you out. So I got an open prison. On my first sentence, I got an open jail. Because my offence was classed as minor, because it was like driving offences, I went into an open prison. Where I had nothing outside for me, like, I classed jail as home. I think you say I got institutionalised, even off a minor sentence, because I actually had quite good fun in there. I turned that into being outside on the street. Just the difference is that I'm just in prison, really. 3 meals a day, worked in the kitchen, was earning money, I was going to the gym, mixing with adult prisoners as well. So I went from what I was doing outside, inside.
So doing it in there, so you just adjusted to that sort of system,
And I was selling drugs in there. So, and back then it was phone cards. So it was like £2 phone cards. So if anyone wants a spliff, it's a £2 phone card on canteen. So like, I had phone cards like this underneath my bed. Like it was mad. Like it was just like, what? Like, you know, this is supposed to be a deterrent, you know, not like, don't come back to jail.
So basically you've just adjusted to doing it from the outside to in the inside.
Yeah. And I loved it. So I found myself going back and forth. Like back and forth, back and forth. I'm not going to say it was all rosy all the time, because it weren't. I've had a couple of little mistakes in there. But yeah, so that's where it all started, really. And I think the final time when I went to Glen Parva for me that stood out, I was in a cell with some kid. I was really judgmental back in the day. When I walked in the cell, I was just like, mate, like, why have they bagged me up with someone like this? Like, he just looked like he was an opening for bullying, you know?
Yeah.
And if you get put in a cell with someone that's opening for bullying, you're involved.
I suppose it brings it to your
Brings
doorstep,
it to your
doesn't it?
cell, yeah. And I walked in and I saw him and I was just like, mate, like, you know.